What is up, everybody? Nuie here. So as I said previously in my other just quick rundown discussion video, this will be my last path building build for a little while until I'm able to get everything up and running again correctly and able to actually comfortably play. So what this last build is my Duel Herald Power Siphon. This is my Duel Herald Power Siphon Wanderer build. I literally just am using Power Siphon from level 12 onward, and I'm literally just playing with Power Siphon and utilizing everything that I can. And what I've come up with is basically this tree. So I'm going to break down everything from the talent tree, the gear that you end up looking for, the unique items I used, and the ascendancy trees, as well as the bandit choices. So to start with, as far as my bandit choice, I chose Alira. Alira gives you mana regen, crit multiplier, and resistances. I need the extra resistances were nice to get, as well as the crit multiplier is extremely imperative to this build, as I heavily am focused on crit and crit multi in this build with everything involved with it. Some basic benefits of this build are that I am immune to elemental reflect, so I can pretty much run whatever maps I want to run. I also have a lot of mana reserved, a lot of unreserved mana, so there's plenty of ways to just kind of comfortably not run as much mana leech or anything like that, and just kind of run. For me personally, I decided to run clarity. But for you guys, it's whatever you want to do. And I also am able to get a lot of I also am able to run 2 golems if you want to. I have specified the golems I used, and I also get basically an extra elemental weakness almost through my Scion ascendancy. So heading into the ascendancy choices and what I am going to be doing, so the first one I want to take is my Elementalist ascendancy. When you get your Cruel Lab done, the reason I grab this is it gives me the 10% elemental resistances pen. It also makes it so that I cannot take reflected elemental damage. It also gives me the 40% increased effect of my heralds. Again, this is a dual herald build, so I'll be using Herald of Ice as well as Herald of Thunder, and those are my 2 heralds that I'll be using, so this is a huge boost for them. It also gives me shock for my hits, always increase damage taken by at least 10%, and I'm able to summon an extra golem. So this is a huge node for our damage as well as defensive capabilities. The next thing I followed that up with is, once I finished up my Merciless Lab, was to grab the Inquisitor, which gives me plus 30% to critical strike multiplier against enemies that are affected by elemental ailments. We have 2 ways of doing that, but we have both we have the freeze chance from Herald of Ice, as well as shock chance from Herald of Lightning, and just lightning damage in general. This also gives us an extra 6% elemental resistance pen, and it also gives us concentrated round when we hit rare and unique enemies, which gives us extra life regen as well as extra mana regen. It also makes it so that nearby enemies take 10% increased elemental damage, which is going to be really, really useful because it also gives me kind of an integrator for being able to tell when you're in point blank range, because it basically puts a little circle around the enemies that you walk up to, and it basically gives you that indicator when you're close enough for the 10% increased elemental damage, which also puts you in range for point blank, which I will be taking in this build. The last thing, if you do your Uber Lab, is just to grab the extra skill points. Not entirely necessary, but if you're able to get Uber Lab done, it is just an easy way to go grab that, just for 2 extra skill points. Heading into the tree, we head up through the attack speed. We want to head up through our attack speed nodes and our dexterity. We'll eventually end up grabbing crit multiplier, but I do not grab that during my leveling process. I fixated the majority of my skill points onto grabbing my early life as well as my extra just basically my stat points. So I branched the tree specifically through These nodes, I headed through Harrier to get the increased attack speed and cast speed. I headed up and immediately grabbed Arcing Blows. This gives me extra lightning pen with my weapons, as well as 30% increased lightning damage with attack skills, as well as 10% increased effect of shock. From this point, I headed down through Cold-Hearted Calculation, which gives me the increased attack damage, as well as some mana regenerate, as well as flat intelligence. And then I headed down through Nullification for the increased evasion, all res, as well as maximum life. I headed through Blood Drinker and headed down down this way. I made sure to grab Phase Acrobatics at some point during leveling, but it's not incredibly necessary very early, but I did end up grabbing it and leveling around Comb and Duress, so it just made it very easy for dodging and stuff like that. I continued down. I did grab Primeval Force. This gives me more elemental pen, as well as gives me increased elemental damage with attack skills during any flask effect, so as well as just a flat 20% increased elemental damage. I did take the upper portion of this, not the lower portion. I don't particularly care as much about the extra freeze and shock chance as much as the extra elemental damage is better. And then I headed down and grabbed Fangs of Frost, which gives me cold pen, as well as increased cold damage with my attack skills. And I also grabbed Point Blank, because this gives me 50% increase more damage with my abilities at the beginning of their movement. And because I'm going to be using Chain towards, again, towards Act 4, that's when I really ended up grabbing that. And then the rest of the tree is just kind of filled out with various life nodes, various elemental damage, a lot of crit multiplier, and a lot of elemental damage with attacks, as well as elemental pen. The only thing that's really, and also I grabbed a bunch of few gem sockets, so I have 4 involved in this build, being here, and as well as here. I also grabbed you get total of 6 I believe 6 power charges? No, 5 power charges, 4 frenzy charges. I made sure to not grab this frenzy charge and instead grab this frenzy charge, because it gives you increased evasion per frenzy charge, which is much more important than just getting a flat increased frenzy charge duration. And then I just grabbed some extra life, and the last thing I finished up with is Fusillade, which gives me a lot of damage, as well as the extra crit multiplier with wands and stuff like that. I did not grab the extra wand damage over here. Instead, I went this way, ensure that I'm getting the extra crit wands. And I did this because of the one that I specifically made this build with, whereas I don't actually have a lot of physical damage to convert, if any, because I am using a Piscator, so the wand damage is entirely elemental. I did grab Wand Slinger, and then I grabbed pretty much everything else is just crit multiplier and stuff like that, and life as well. So that's what the majority of the skill tree is going to look like. This is what everything looks like in total. This is 121 skill points, 126 skill points full out. I do have it all planned out. This is what the 45. Yeah, this is what I had for when I first started leveling. This is what basically I used for the early leveling process. As you can see, I grabbed early gem sockets. Again, if you don't have the jewels for this, don't bother with these gem sockets, and then you have some extra life or some extra elemental damage and stuff like that. But I headed through here and grabbed all of this early, and then I finished up all of the elemental damage nodes. And then as I was getting into maps, I should say, because I started crashing a buttload and just couldn't really do maps or anything like that for whatever reason, I was going to wrap up and just start grabbing all my crit nodes and stuff like that. I grabbed the elemental damage and stuff and the flat damage nodes first, and then I was going to finish up with all my crit nodes. So all my crit nodes and all my jewels and stuff like that was what I was going to finish up with. So all this crit nodes, these crit nodes, these crit nodes, I was going to finish up with all of those once I hit towards endgame maps and stuff like that. But whatever happened, so I kind of got taken out of the game. But this is what I put using Power Siphon. I am using Val Power Siphon, so I do have a total skill for everything. But heading into my skills, I'm using Herald of Thunder, Herald of Ice, both of them linked to Curse on Hit with Elemental Weakness. I'm using cast when damage taken, Immortal Call, Blood Rage, Decoy Totem. Decoy Totem is not going to be supported by cast when damage taken, but because of the boots I am using, this was just an easy play to put this, as well as Decoy Totem just being extremely efficient for Decoy Totem is just extremely efficient in terms of bossing. Like for labs, it was just made labbing very easy because I can just put it down and then Deraso, or not Deraso, wow. Azaro does not focus me, instead focus my totem, and I'm able to kill him very quickly. My Val Power Siphon, which is Val Power Siphon, added cold damage, elemental damage with attacks, and chain, is also has added lightning damage, which comes from my gloves, and that'll be my glove setup, so that's what you're going to need. My body armor was my barrage setup, which is barrage, added cold, added lightning, elemental damage with attacks, GMP, and increased critical strikes. As far as my main weapon, which is going to be my Piscators, I had Summon Lightning Golem and I Summon Ice Golem. Instead of Minion Life, I actually chose to run Clarity. This just gave me extra regen for mana. It's not actually necessary because of the amount of mana you have, as well as the ease that you will have when killing mobs. You pretty much aren't spam casting Power Siphon, but for me, just to make spam casting Barrage when I was doing bossing a little bit easier, I decided to switch out Minion Life with Clarity. So that's what I chose. And the last thing I have is Val Haste with increased duration and efficacy. I just put that on my shield. So heading into my items and my unique items, the unique items I use in this build are a Piscators. This gives me a lot of flat elemental damage. It also gives me extra elemental pen. It also gives me critical strike chance, and that's pretty much the majority of what I use for this. I use the Hyr's Ire, which gives me a lot of flat cold damage. It also gives me a lot of dex, as well as extra 10% chance to dodge attacks and 10% damage to dodge spell damage. I use Thunder Fist, Martyr Mitts. This gives me Socketed Gems are supported by added lightning damage. So this is my setup for my pseudo 5-link for our Power Siphon. So it'll be that's once again Power Siphon, or Val Power Siphon I should say. Added lightning, added cold, elemental damage with attacks, and chain. And the added lightning is coming from this item. It also gives me a flat added 1 to 100 lightning damage to my attacks. It increases the shock duration on enemies, so this is a very nice item for that. For my boots, I did use Wake Up Destruction. This gives me 1 to 120 lightning damage, flat lightning damage added to my attacks. It also gives me extra life gained on kill, which helps with Frenzy, because Frenzy kind of does a little bit of damage over time. So being able to kill mobs and having extra life gained on kill was very nice for using that. I did use a new unique item, which is Sacrificial Heart Paw Amulet. This came out in this current league. It gives me flat added fire damage, flat added cold damage, and flat added lightning damage. The fire damage is to a lesser extent, but the flat, because I'm using so much elemental damage in general, it ends up just being kind of useful. But the majority of the things I use this for is the flat cold damage, the flat lightning damage, as well as being able to gain the power charge when I use a Val skill, as well as 10 life gained for each enemy hit by Val skill recently, and the increased move speed if I use a Val skill. It also gives me flat mana regeneration, so it's just a very comfortable item. And then the two unique flasks I use, I eventually was going to upgrade this to a Soul Whisperer's flask, but I'm actually using the, where's my flask? That's not the flask. Where is it? Here. Soul Catcher is actually what I'm using. It gives me increased damage when I'm using my Val skill. So with Val Power Siphon, you just pop this flask and then you just pop your Val Power Siphon. It pretty much clears the entire map for you. So, well, not the entire map, but pretty much your entire screen is going to be insta-killed. So, really nice with that. I eventually was going to upgrade it to a Soul Ripper, but it's not actually necessary to do so. I just was going to, but it's quite a bit of currency to do so. I don't know if it is right now. I haven't played it in a little bit, but that's what I was going to do. And then you can also use an series just if you want some extra life leech. I didn't actually choose to use an series. I just didn't feel like buying one, and I just decided to run 2 life flasks instead. But this is what you can use for your extra items. Basically, your gear is going to be revolving around basically just getting you a lot of resistances as well as evasion, and stacking evasion as well as just some life is what you're looking for with this gear. So that's what you're looking for with all your things, is basically just evasion, life, and resistances in that order. You can use diamond rings, however, my character is currently using just 2 stone rings because it makes it easier for capping reses. However, if you're going to use the diamond ring, it does give you the increased critical strike chance, and you're looking for added cold damage or just whatever added damage. You're looking for life, you're looking for elemental resistance, and you're looking for increased elemental damage with attack skills. Those are what you're looking for when it comes to rings. And then you want to use the Stitch and Vise if you can, if you need the rest of the resistances, but the majority of what you're looking for on this is just the flat life, as well as increased elemental damage with attacks with your skills. And then I just use for jewels, I'm basically using anything between added lightning, added cold, max life, wand attacks, stuff, crit chance, crit multiplier. All of those are really great for the jewels you want to use. And this is kind of just examples of what I'm using with those. But as you can see, my damage is pretty nice. In total, I have 5 power charges, 4 frenzy charges. We get increased damage with every power charge. We get increased damage with frenzy charges. We're using Blood Rage, we're using Herald of Ice, we're using Herald of Thunder, we're using Foul Haste. So it's just a very, very comfortable build. This is sort of what these numbers are going to look like. It'll be a little bit different for you depending on what kind of rolls you get on your Piscators, what kind of stuff you get, but pretty much this is what it all looks like. So yeah, this was my Duel Herald build. I was having a ton of fun with it before everything happened, and I'm really frustrated that it all happened, but it is what it is, and we gotta move forward. So I just want to make sure I get this build out before I start going into other things. I do plan on getting build guides out for probably Neverwinter, as well as rotational guides for when I start playing Skyforge again. So thank you guys so much for the support. I'll catch you all later. Nuie out.